Registration, fines, penalties, standards, lots of controversy over the Teaching Council bill that's now before Parliament. We had to come back to the issue to hear some more perspectives on it. Thank you so much for joining us. This is All Angles. I'm Dion Jackson-Miller. And joining me today in studio, we have the president, well, online is president of the Jamaica Association of Principals of Secondary Schools, Linvern Wright. Also with us in studio, Dean of the Teachers Colleges of Jamaica, Dr. Garth Anderson, President of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Dr. Mark Smith with us as well, and member of the Jamaica Association of Principals and Vice Principals, also principal of Kingston Technical High School, Malton, Campbell. Just before we come to our guests, though, let's hear what Education Minister Senator Dana Morris Dixon had to say to us last week about the need for the proposed legislation.
I think it's something that's been seen to be very important, and globally we're seeing more individuals move towards, and more countries move towards having a teaching council. It's really about professionalizing the profession of teaching. It really says you can't just wake up one morning and say I'm a teacher and end up in a classroom. It is setting professional standards for teachers. It speaks to continuous professional development. It speaks to fit and proper, how you establish that someone is good enough to be around our children. So these types of legislations are actually, you're seeing more of them around the world. And even in CARICOM had agreed that this was something that was a priority for member states. And you also have global commissions on education that have all said that this is the direction that will be very helpful for countries in terms of raising the standards and really protecting the profession, and also protecting our students and giving them the kind of teachers that they deserve, especially in an environment where we know we have deficiencies and where we want the best for our children. So these types of legislations with a council that mandate, continuous professional education and standards are becoming very routine, and you see them around the world.
One of the concerns, though, is that are we going a little bit overboard at the introduction of this new regime, even looking at, for instance, some of the penalties? So, for instance, if you're teaching without the requisite registration or authorization, and then the council sends you a notice, and you continue to teach, you're liable for a fine of up to $500,000. Some of the fines seem very heavy in relation to what it is we're talking about.
And I think when you look at the bill is very clear that there are maximum amounts that are put in. And what the Joint Select Committee had done, and if you look at the report from the Joint Select Committee, they looked at the fines by looking at other pieces of legislation that dealt with fraudulent offenses, and they just benchmarked based on that. But those were maximum amounts. The court would determine what that fine would ultimately be. And so I think the issue of those fines is one that I think people have focused on quite a bit, but I don't think that's really what the focus should be. The focus should be on what are we trying to get out of this bill. We're trying to establish that a teacher is fit and proper. Most of our teachers are already fit and proper. We know that. But we also know we've had instances, there were individuals who have pretended to be teachers or in our classroom who have not been healthy for our children. And what we're saying is, as a country, we believe education is so important that we want to have and ensure that the persons who are in front of our children, that are interacting with our children and our girls and our boys, that they are fit and proper individuals. That's a big part of this bill. And that is a very good thing. And I think that's a great thing for Jamaica. Also, the elements about continuous professional development, those are really good things too. So many of our teachers already are down that road. It's such a good bill, and there's so many elements I want to talk through. But in terms of next steps, it was passed in the Senate. And just to remind everyone, that was after many years of debate, after 45 Joint Select Committee meetings, many entities coming and presenting to the Joint Select Committee. So we passed it in the Senate. The next step would be for it to be tabled and passed in the House. But of course, we're a government that is very listening and we're very caring, and I've had that approach with the government. I have a monthly meeting with the JTA. Every single month I meet with the JTA where they come with their issues. If there are concerns, I know we can work them through.
Oh boy, how you listen to that and then have issues, and yet the JTA does. Perhaps I should start with you then, Dr. Smith. Minister says professionalizing teaching, making sure people who are in front of our children are fit and proper, standards, setting standards. That's something that's being done the world over. So JTA just a fight against sake.
What do I say to that, Dion? Well, good evening. Thanks for having me. I listened intently, and I do agree with some of what Minister said. So, for instance, the idea that we want to professionalize the teaching service, the JTA, and I've uttered that on multiple occasions. We believe in the principle of licensing. What we have to ensure is that the final bill that gets through the lower house is a bill that reflects what we consider a protection of the rights of teachers. It is fair to the teachers, while at the same time empowers and adds autonomy to the teaching service.
And you don't think the current bill does that?
We have significant concerns about it. We have made several representations through the Joint Select Committee, in fact, two in 2014 and 2018. And we believe that not enough opportunity was taken by the committee to actually apply much of what we have said. Much talk has been had about the gestation period of this bill. And you'd have heard people say 20 years. Well, certainly not 20 years because we have stepped in the way. 20 years because we have seen a failure to really engage in meaningful, deliberate engagement. And that's what we're asking for.
All right, we'll get into details in a little bit. But Mr. Campbell, your position on the bill?
My position is that, yes, the bill is needed. We know that the Jamaica Teaching Council have been around. It has been a part of the Ministry of Education for a while, and we know that it's operating, but it doesn't really have the legal framework to operate and do much of what it needs to do. Mm-hmm. But currently, as the bill is not reflecting the current realities that are facing the education system at this time. There are a number of issues. There are monsters, things like teacher migration, things like burnout, teacher burnout, and of course there's the issue of the boards. So when we have issues, when we look at like section 51 of the bill that deals with disciplinary aspect of it, we have to be careful. We really have to listen and have the conversation and really go back and revisit to ensure that we are clear on how we deal with issues that affects our teachers. Thank you.
I'm going to come back, but just want to go around the table first. So for you, what about you, Dr. Anderson?
Well, certainly in principle, we support the bill. And that has been said over and over again for years. But we have serious concern about aspects of the bill. And the truth is, I think what we have to assess on the public, since 2014, this bill that we now have, we could have passed it then. Because the bill, little changes have been made to the bill. Significantly, what has changed? We moved from 19 to 31. And the section dealing with if you are practicing without authorization or without your license, then they remove the area about 6 months in prison. But substantially, this is the bill from 2014. And the same concerns have been laid before the policymakers at all levels in writing. We have evidence of that. And yet today, we are discussing the same things. I heard a clip with the executive director of JTC saying that, we have listened to the JTA, which is a union representing over 25,000 teachers. And we have put in what they have asked for. They asked for 6 members, and we put in 6 members. But at the time when we asked for 6 members, there were 19 persons on the board. They moved it to 31 and we still have 6. So this is really voodoo mathematics that they're working. We just have to be honest. I heard the minister to say we are prepared to listen, and I have no doubt that will happen. But the current state of the bill is doom and gloom, if you ask me, for the teaching profession.
Wow.
And so those who advocate will have to stand between the devil and the wide blue sea that is awaiting to drown teachers and the teaching profession.
Strong words, Dr.
Strong words I'm using, because how is it these things could be out there for so long? They are not unreasonable.
No attempts to resolve it.
The UN High Panel on the Status of Teaching says that teachers must have agency over their profession.
Hold that thought for me, because I'm at the break. And I know, Mr. Wright, we haven't heard from you, but seeing that I spoke to you on radio and you sounded fine with the bill, it's going to be interesting to hear what you say when we come back after the break. We'll soon come. Remember, you can WhatsApp us. Want to hear from you. It's 254-0693. That's 876-254-0693. 93. Give us your first name and your general location. We'll soon come. Thank you so much for joining us. Continuing to get perspectives on the Jamaica Teaching Council bill now before Parliament. Remember our WhatsApp line 254-0693 876-254-0693. Over on X, Yolande says, I'm still not clear on the objections to the bill. It seems like nitpicking and finding fault for the sake of finding fault. Get into details in just a moment, but let me bring in Linvern Wright, who is with us by Zoom. Mr. Wright, you had sounded basically fine with the bill. All your colleagues seem to disagree, so tell me where you are now.
Yes, so I'm fine with the fact that we're professionalizing teaching. I'm seeing very little to be concerned with, except that what we are thinking is that the bill is going to be a panacea to deal with all the ills in education. I don't think it is going to be doing that. I think there are things that are, if it is that we're going to be fixing education, there are people who feel that if we fix teachers by being, by having a bill in place, then everything is going to be okay. I don't believe that. There's a need to professionalize. There's a need to ensure that there are strictures within which we get things going, that there's professional development, that people understand that they have a responsibility to be fit and proper. I have no issues with those. What I have an issue with is that these same teachers are expected to be operating in schools that are without the sufficient resources. The minister herself was looking in a school in terms of the technical vocational departments, and she herself was aghast at the dilapidated conditions of these labs. Funding for education, especially in high schools, that I represent the principals, has been the same for the last 9 years. And we're talking about, changing education. I don't know how a bill that is asking us to professionalize teachers is going to address that when teachers don't have the resources to work with. Technology is still a significant problem within education. Or boards of management, many of them still very incompetent. We have people who are being put on boards because of partisan payment. And we're saying that if you professionalize teaching and have people on the boards of management who are partisan and are biased, and really many of them are below the standards of many people, maybe at below primary level, you cannot have a transformed education system. I'm concerned about education, not teachers only. So we have got to understand that the context in which we expect this bill to operate definitely will in the minds of many, put burdens on teachers to be doing more than they can given the strictures within which they work right now, or the restrictions within which they work.
Shouldn't some of these issues be separated though and disaggregated? In other words, you mentioned, for instance, as this Mr. Campbell, the issue of boards. You mentioned the issue of funding, dilapidated labs, and so on and so forth. All of those are important and need to be addressed. But right now, isn't a concentration simply on the issue of the registration and regulation of the teaching profession? And can't we deal with that while perhaps at the same time looking at some of those other issues, but not necessarily conflating issues?
No, it's an ecosystem that we're dealing with, and things are going to affect each other. And I can say how. If it is that we're dealing with teacher competence, if it is that teachers don't have resources to work with, a teacher cannot work in a vacuum. So it is not just a teacher with her bare hands or his bare hands who is working on a bare board or a bare. A teacher has to operate in a context. That's one of the things. If you're talking about competence and you have a board of management that is not going to take decisions that are sensible, you've been to college for how many years, you're certified, everything is good with you, and you look at people who are put on boards that are rewarded, no significant standards to actually get these people there, more than that they are close to the member of parliament or that they are maybe close to some other organization. Those can't work. You can't expect teachers to function within such a context where what they have to work with and who are being set over them are people who themselves are way below the standards that they are expecting of teachers. If we are professionalizing teaching, it means that you have to have people who are respectable, people who are competent, people who are qualified supervising, because that's what a board does. So I don't agree that we can separate them, because you're expecting a teacher to function professionally in a context.
But to be clear, and I'm coming back to my guest in studio in a second, but to be clear, you don't have any particular issues with the provisions of the bill. Would that be correct?
No, very little. I mean, and I tell you quickly, there are some things that I think some of my colleagues have issues with. That when I look at it, I don't. So, for example, when you look at why, for example, somebody might be charged $500,000, when I read through, I recognize that the bill says you get a 21 days notice period when you're found not to have that. The bill actually gives 2 21-day notice periods. So first, you don't comply, there's another 21 days. Then second, there's another 21 days. Then your employer is notified. And after your employer is notified, then if it is that your employer notified and you continue, you fine $500. I'm being truthful. I have no issues with that. I have no issue with somebody who is fraudulent in certification after teachers have gone to college for how long and practice, and those persons are charged. I have no problems with a person who knowingly omits information or knowingly gives information that is wrong to ensure that they become a teacher. Those things, I think, I have no problems with the punishment for that. Anybody who is a teacher and decides to do that kind of thing does not deserve to be a teacher, and I'm not defending that.
Okay, I feel rustling and movement in the studio here.
Can I just chime in a bit? Can I just chime in a bit?
Go ahead.
There's this thing, I mean, some of this terminology, there's a fit and proper. Fit and proper was explained properly between section 27, 28, and they go all the way around. There's another term that was used, which is currency of practice.
Yeah.
Now, currency of practice, when I searched through the bill, I was looking to see how this would work. And this is something that I feel that the bill is lacking a bit there. There could be a little bit more. There could be at least a minimum standard that could be set out. There could be a clause in the bill that would set out a minimum standard for teaching environment in terms of what is the workload for teachers, class side.
One second. Let me just make sure people are following. Yes. So you speak about currency of practice, for instance, and what it says in 28 is currency of practice as a teacher of at least 2 consecutive years within the 5 years preceding before you're applying for the license. So you should have been teaching for 2 years.
Yes, but in which environment?
Meaning what?
Meaning, what was your workload? How was your class size? Is it that a person just say, I was teaching for 2 years? In which environment? What is the minimum standard for that clearly in the bills that set out this person would have worked in this minimum, this is the workload, this class size, and so forth? I would like to see something like that.
Okay.
Being in the
If I may, Dion, I want to switch the conversation, look at what we consider as a serious challenge, that is the excessive, what we consider some of the excessive penalties. 500,000.
Yes, right was saying.
Right, yes. And he doesn't think, and so I hold a diametrically opposed position on that. Between 500,000 to $1.5 million, based on how it is outlined. I want to shift attention to section 23. 3B, which speaks to omission, all right? Now, an omission, it doesn't state an omission, of course, could be accidental. We have had politicians who have omitted bits of information, and we have to be careful about how it is that we meet as though teachers. I was on a talk show recently, and it was articulated that, at the end of the day, anybody that is teaching a child ought not to be making an error on their submission. I don't think it, I mean, obviously may have individuals who may desire to do that for fraudulent means, but to prove whether or not you may have genuine cases. And what we're saying is we do not want to expose our teachers to what we consider significant fines in the event there is a, what should I say, an accidental omission. No, it doesn't mean that you can't have a fine. We're not saying there's no fine. But what we're saying is
what?
An omission. They can have an omission.
Omission of what?
In submitting your information for your license. And so we're saying that we think is excessive. So these are some of the things we're talking about. As a union, we have to be tackling those issues because at the end of the day, we're talking about a profession in which we already take a pay penalty to serve the country. And so, there is actually the issue of fees. We want to ensure that there is a clear formula articulated in the bill that deals with how we will arrive at these fees. The concept of just leaving it to the whims of a minister, I think is very dangerous.
These are fees for what?
Fees for the relicensing or the licensing process. We believe you must have something. You have to state a percentage of. I believe always going with a percentage, and some of our laws are written giving figures. I'm saying a percentage of the earning for the month. I think that would be fair. So you say half a percentage point or whatever it is that you come up with. That I think is a better approach to take and provides better guardrails. I could get into issues regarding Section 59, subsection 1, which we're talking about the presumption of innocence. And that then would deal with the whole concept of one of our fundamental principles, within the whole concept of natural justice, that we're expecting that an individual, if you are charged with an offense, you ought not to be placed in a position where you will find that you are, first of all, losing revenue. During that period, under Section 62, you're not allowed to earn during that period. But to compound matters, they can come back and retry you. These are some scary things for individuals. We want these aspects. So we're not talking about you have a rapist or a gunman who is coming into teaching search. We embrace the fact that we should keep people like that out. So there's no issue the JTA has with that. And I've realized there are some people within social media and the media that is pushing this narrative that the JTA doesn't have a problem with people who are involved in molestation. No, certainly not. We want them out of the profession. We do not want to associate with individuals like that. But in the same time, we must treat with the principles of natural justice, which is constitutionally due to all Jamaicans.
And I think we have to be careful how we look at it as well. If you're building, there are examples of professional councils around. Why is it teaching should be different? 95% of the teachers in Jamaica are paid by the government. How possible it is for you? Teachers don't employ themselves. For a teacher to be caught practicing without a license, whether in the private sector or in the public sector. And in the private sector, what is the responsibility that is being placed on the employer? All of the pressures are on the teacher, and so it gives the bill this punitive overtone, as though, yes, we're going to catch them now. We're going to fix this business in education. As Mr. Wright was saying, once we fix the teachers, we fix education. Nonsense. That is not going to happen. So the problem we have when you look at nurses, when you look at lawyers, when you look at doctors, those kinds of punitive measures are not there. For example, a nurse without her license, or whether it's he or she, it's $1,000 a day. I'm not suggesting you must charge $1,000, but that's what it is today. $1,000. The employer, it's $1 million. But for teachers, why teachers should be singled out?
$500,000.
Up to $500,000 can bankrupt a teacher, many of our teachers. We don't have control over what a court will rule. Why is that necessary? Is it that we are setting up the system inherently, saying that we're going to catch some people going to be able to go through the cracks?
Hold that thought for me. I'm going to pick up on a couple of the points you all made when we come back. Remember our WhatsApp line, folks. We want to hear from you as well. It is... All right, thank you so much for staying with us. We're talking about the Teaching Council bill just before I go to another clip from our last program as well as back to our guests in studio. A couple of your comments on our WhatsApp line, 2540693. Daryl in Trelawney says the bill does more harm than good by criminalizing teachers instead of uplifting and certifying them. Patrick in Montego Bay says the bill is draconian. It lacks substance. Teachers are already overwhelmed with huge numbers of students who are ill-mannered and classrooms lacking furniture. This bill is hanging the teachers out to dry. And Don in Kingston says, I need some specifics. There's nothing wrong with the bill. Maybe some additions. And a couple of comments of your comments on X. We have Ryan says regulatory institutions are about protecting the public. The public will always be its key client. Professionals, if your regulatory institution is bending over backwards to accommodate you, it's not doing its job. And let's listen to a bit of what the opposition spokesperson on education, Senator Damian Crawford, had to say about the bill last week.
There's nothing more demoralizing to an excellent teacher than somebody beside them not doing what they're supposed to do and nothing happens. They will not say anything to that person. We're in the staff room, we're colleagues, but they expect you to deal with that because I am on time, I meet my deadlines, I'm in my class, I mark my papers, I plan. And this person is beside me, slacker, and nothing happens. What is going on here? It is extremely demoralizing. Good teachers want their colleagues themselves to be held to high standards. And that has made me say more and more, we need to be holding our teachers.
That's one of the benefits of the bill. The equity theory suggests that good teacher may reduce their efforts so that there's some equity in what's happening. I'm getting the same pay, I'm putting in all this effort and this person is not doing it. However, to hold accountable does not suggest that we can't have a fund for legal representation.
No, absolutely.
So these are some of the things that we're saying. I'm not against accountability, but many persons who have been found not guilty still have the punishment of the cost of legal representation. So therefore, we're saying that there should be a fund at least for those found not guilty.
Let's go to the issue of the re-registration, though, because again, you have an issue in that you think every 5 years for re-registration is too onerous.
Well, not only onerous, I think the government is incapable to execute.
All right, let's separate them because logistics is one thing.
All right.
Every 5 years is a long time.
Yes.
And again, I'm bringing to it from my position of having to register every year, every January.
There are two things that we must accept. One, there are different professions. For example, there's more autonomy within your profession as a legal person, and there's more autonomy within medicine. There's less autonomy within teaching because they have a board, they have a principal, etc. They have a curriculum that must
5 years is a long time.
And they have a ministry. There's also best practices. I can speak to Canada, I can speak to UK, that you only register once. So therefore, once you're registered, unless there's reason for review, there is no review. We're having a system that we're saying every 5 years you must go back through that process.
Sorry, if you're comparing though, I mean, acknowledge that there are different comparators.
Yes.
So there are other places in which it's
indeed. There is the United States that is every 5 years. There is New Zealand that is every 3 years.
Okay.
But I'm saying that in our situation, because of the duty to report, right? In particular, as it relates to the police record, there's a duty to report by the principal and individual who know of an adverse finding. Then after the first police record, we don't believe there's a need for a second.
But what the whole point of asking for assuming you accept that the police record is necessary in the first place, because this is somebody who's dealing with your children, want to make sure, say, you're not a pedophile, you never have no conviction for sexual assault, but the fact that you have a clean record today doesn't mean you're going to have a clean record 5 years from now, so why shouldn't?
So unless there's reason for assumption, then you can require it, but without no reason for assumption, you're asking 35,000 people to go to a police record system that will take years to deliver all of those. So you can't put into a bill
separate the logistics. Right. So, I see Mr. Jacob shaking.
The question is, why not? Why not get yourself re-registered in over 5 years? We should not look at what exists. We're having a police record system that is slow in coming.
Yes.
But look at it that it is needed, because we have persons who will be teaching our children, sitting in front of them, who might be serious offenders.
Yes.
And the system needs to find them And this is one we are doing it. If we are going to look at teachers being professional and best fit, best practice, then we ought to have in place that system that allows us as parents to feel very comfortable that the teacher who's teaching our children is fit and proper.
Okay, let me go back to Mr. Wright first. So, Mr. Wright, the issue of re-registration, any issues with that as proposed?
No, as I said, many, as I heard, different countries have different standards. The bill is asking for us to do it every 5 years. No big issues. I understand the matter of maybe the payments. I think we need to be fair in terms of the amounts that we're asking, and we need to determine what kind of regime we're going to be using to deal with that. But I have no issues with a 5-year period now.
Okay, gentlemen, Dr. Smith.
When
look like you're raring to go.
Oh, yes, and indeed, when we look at even the frustration, as Garth was indicating, with many of our early childhood practitioners going through the process of getting their police records, that is an entire show in and of itself. The inefficiencies, now we're talking about what we consider the costs now being applied to teachers. So on top of the questionable salaries that we're paid, we have to now look to procure these. We believe, and this is one of the suggestions that we have made, is that the body seeking to verify that the teacher is fit and requires a police record should pay for that, not the teacher. And I think that is in keeping with ensuring that we spread the cost across. This idea that we're going to fix everything, all the ills of the system, by putting the burden on the teacher, I think is definitely not the way to retain teachers in a climate where, according to Antonio Guterres, the United Nations Secretary General, that we're seeing a 44 million teacher shortage globally, where we are having our teachers poached, losing close to 1,500 per year. How long can we sustain it before we have significant challenges? Again, we're not against the bill. If you make these corrections that we have identified, we're saying we are willing to go along. And I believe there's a golden opportunity here. And to the credit of the minister, she has indicated that we have been talking to say, can we have a coming together of the minds? Because I think we need the level heads to ensure we move forward to achieve the professionalization of the service, but at the same time ensuring we don't put our teachers out to dry.
Isn't there an issue though, Dr. Anderson, in terms of why shouldn't professionals invest in themselves? In terms of the registration requirements, licensing requirements, professional education requirements?
Of course. I don't know that there's a problem with professionals investing in themselves. And that is what teachers have always been doing. Teachers spend millions of dollars yearly going to all these conferences currently, as we speak, investing in their own professional development. But when you look now, this is your employer saying you must pay for your license. I think teachers want to pay for their license. What we have an issue with, what will be this cost? For nurses, it's $2,000. In this bill, the makers of it have been pushing away from the idea to say, give us an idea. How will you come up with the costing? Nobody wants to talk about that. We should wait for the regulations to come. That's buying puss in bag. Why is it some things are so crystal clear in the bill, but some fundamental things are just you are playing around with it? We don't want to say. What you don't want is for this bill to be a tax on teachers. We're already underpaid. I don't think we need even to go into that conversation. Despite the restructuring that took place, that moved us significantly, there are still severe concerns because of where we are coming from. And those are some realities on the ground. So we want to invest, but it can't be onerous. It can't be really putting bankrupt the teacher by paying bills and bills and bills and bills, because we are setting up a system that we won't be able to finance or manage. The financing of it is another issue, though. Nothing in this bill is saying who will be running this very complex bureaucracy that will be dealing with appraisals, that can take issues that boards to which teachers are employed are dealing with and take it to treat with it. Or you can go to the court and you get acquitted. and then they retry you to see if you're fit and proper. So it gets into governance issues, operational issues. There are a whole lot of complex issues. This is another mini ministry in the ministry. Nobody's talking about the political interference. I think Mr. Wright mentioned that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 23 of the members of the 31-member council will be named by the minister.
And you're concerned about that is?
Of course we must be concerned. Any teacher, every teacher should be concerned. Why is it the minister has the power to name 23 of the 31? And why is it the JTA who represents teachers can only name 6? And I think one from UWE and one from UTech. Why is it the quorum can be a case where non-teachers outnumber teachers and can have a meeting and make a professional judgment about teachers? We are not less than anybody else.
In fact,
so I'm a little bit surprised. I'm a little bit surprised that any teacher would say we don't have serious concern. We are as good as anybody else. What is the message you're sending to teachers? We are not capable of having agency over our own profession? That's a slap in the face.
Dion, I must just make this plug about this. When we look at, for instance, the Nurses Association, right? Our good colleagues and friends there. Their board, you have 15 individuals on the board. And their associations that represent nurses can name up to 12 of the members there. And the 15. Now, you start to wonder, what about teachers? I've heard the argument floated that it's because we have other stakeholders. So nurses and in the medical field there and other stakeholders. What we're asking for is parity. We're saying, let's look at the existing structures, the templates we've been using within the country for our boards or regulatory bodies, and how closely can we mimic that. We feel that with some adjustments, we are willing to go along, but we must fix the bill in its present manifestation, in its present condition. I think that there are some significant flaws, and it further goes to undermine this whole concept of professionalizing. What we don't want is another layer of bureaucracy, which we seem to be addicted to in this country, believing that adding layers upon layers of bureaucracy will fix. In fact, it has proven to be more inefficient. In fact, I'll tell you, the idea that you're going to look and say that teachers cannot go themselves because you have all... If you look at one of the most successful sporting events we have in this country is Champs, and that's run by principals, teachers, head teachers. And so we have the capacity to run things efficiently, to hold things that people are accountable. But oftentimes, the conversation always strays to the teacher being the problem. But these same teachers are highly sought after internationally. And fundamentally, what you will find is that our schools are under-resourced. We don't want to have the conversation about investment in education and what is needed to leapfrog the country forward.
And there is nothing...
I wanted to come in as well, but I'm nearly at break. I should point out as well, actually, I had a program a couple of weeks ago on the problems at Champs this year, but...
in everything you have
nothing is perfect.
We'll go to the break. 2540693. We'll soon come. Thank you so much for staying with us. All right, let me get in some more of your comments in relation to the Jamaica Teaching Council bill. Hutchinson X says, absolutely nothing is wrong with the bill. The objections make no sense to me. Shanika says there are issues that need to be revisited. The fines for other public bodies aren't significantly high. Therefore, the same should follow for teachers. Fix the bill. JB Dredd says, with all due respect, these men are vilifying the bill so the profession can exist in anarchy. Progress is never perfect. Pass the bill and fix the issues as we go along. I will have the guest respond in just a moment. Another viewer saying, is there a companion set of regulations which would be secondary to the bill under current scrutiny? I'm expecting that there is, but I do have to say that one of our huge problems in this country is that we pass legislation and years later we're still waiting for regulations. That has happened over and over and over. And Omar in St. James says the bill is written in a way that says teachers who are and who have been teaching are incapable of governing themselves. Mm-hmm. All right, Mr. Campbell, let me let you come in.
Thank you. We are for the bill in principle, right? And we want the bill to pass. We're just saying that there needs to be some amendment. One of the areas, of course, is Section 51. In Section 51, a teacher could end up if there's
That's
a
the section
complaint.
that deals with what? What
Complaint.
happens is that because I think I have
Disciplinary.
a different iteration.
Yes, discipline.
How you discipline a teacher
Okay.
if they were to violate. In that section, what could happen is that you could have one offense being investigated by multiple bodies. So you could have the teacher being taken to the board, teacher being taken to the teaching council, the teacher being complained to the ministry. And that in itself is overlapping waste of resources, right? So that's one area we have to sort out. And then we have to be clear as to who will have the final say in terms of the discipline of a teacher if something should go wrong.
Correct.
Meaning whether the board or the teaching council?
Yes. But not just that, within the teaching council, there is a subcommittee by the name of the Professional Practice and Conduct Committee
yes.
that is really responsible to look at the complaint, investigate, and then report back. But that committee has to report also to the school board to say that the school board that there was a complaint or something like that. And if there's a ruling, it becomes a nightmare, right? But one of the things I really want to be added to this bill is something like a clause that would have that will speak to the retention and incentive for teachers. And I know my friends will kind of disagree here because there you're going to have the whole performance-based pay coming in. But that is something that you can sit down and you can work out with the minister and you see how that can work for a teacher. Because the realities is that teachers are leaving the system. We are standardizing our education system. But for which classroom? Is it the American classroom, the Dubai classroom? We want our teachers to stay in the classroom. But we have to make sure that we have standard for working environments. The council needs to set out standard for working environments that make our teachers feel comfortable. They want to stay in the profession.
Yeah, you think that belongs in legislation, the definition of working conditions?
Yes, because you have currency of practice. You are saying to a teacher that you must be current, but in what environment are you practicing your craft? What is your workload? Are you burnt out? What is your class size? Those are some of the things we are just saying that, spell that out clear. Give our teachers an opportunity to stay in our country, in our classroom, retain our quality teachers.
I want to support part of what my colleague is saying. I don't know that you need to go into the nitty-gritty of what it should be, but there's nothing in the bill saying how you're going to incentivize teachers. Even if it's even to make that statement and work that out in regulation.
Isn't that what you all do when you go and meet with the minister every month? And
you plead and we drop on...
No. That is just one
deaf ears.
There are other aspects about incentivizing. It's about how you provide resources for teachers, what kind of opportunities you provide for professional development.
No, that sounds like a legislative issue.
No, I know, but I'm saying in the bill currently, there's nothing that speaks to incentivization. Nothing. And that is why the bill
But that's
appears...
what I'm saying. Is that really a legislative issue? That sounds like an issue of working conditions and, as I said, the MOUs and the agreements that you all enter into.
No. What I'm saying, in the bill, if you have punishment, you should have rewards. That's our basic concepts in teaching and learning. All you have here is a big argument about how we're going to hold teachers accountable, which is good. I don't have a problem with that.
That's why I said earlier on that I think we're conflating issues that don't belong in a regulatory bill. All the issues you're speaking about, incentives and work environment and so on, are all extremely important issues. I'm not trying to downplay that. But this is
But they are connected. They're connected because you said you're going to appraise the teacher.
That, though.
In this bill, we are going to appraise teachers. This bill says the council is responsible for appraising teachers.
Whether you meet the standards according to the regulations.
No. Appraisal is talking about your competence, teaching,
your professional competence.
which is what we are asking how you're going to do that.
Yes. In what environment?
No, but you're talking about incentives, you're talking about resources, you're talking about classroom environment.
Yes, but for you to teach,
I think those are
divorce teaching from providing teachers with the resources.
We're not saying it should be in the bill. I'm
we're
not
not
saying the
saying it,
resources
but
should be in the bill.
They are saying it should be in the bill.
No. I am saying the
no.
context. What I'm speaking on behalf of the Jamaican
Nothing
Teachers
to do with
Association.
that.
I'm saying we're talking about the context because I understand the bill in terms of what it's hoping to achieve. But certainly where we have a lot of problems from the JTA is when we look at things like natural justice. So we talk about section 59 subsection where a registered teacher, I'm going to read the exact quotation, where a registered teacher or instructor has been charged with an offense, the Professional Practice and Conduct Committee may suspend the registration, license, or authorization to teach as the case may be, and as the case may be, right? That's it. You are suspended up to 6 months while they try to work through this. Now the teacher, can you imagine a teacher caught up in a charge? It didn't say convicted of, it said you have been charged. So there is now this presumption of, what about this presumption of innocence, which is a foundation, in terms of how it is we treat with natural justice. We're concerned about that.
Isn't that something that's pretty common in the public sector, though?
No, but you're in interdiction where a percentage of your but nothing is spoken about going on. There is no, the problem we have with it, and if you go further to section 62, subsection 1, and it speaks to if a person's conviction for disqualifying offense is overturned or quashed on appeal, no mention of the process to treat with lost earnings. Those are the things we're talking about. So when people attempt to hijack the conversation to talk about, you have people who are rapists and you have people who are coming to teach and who are thieves, we don't want those people in the profession. We accept that portion of the bill. And I'm saying people are conflating that aspect of it. And it's almost frustrating when people come over to me and say, why do you want? We don't want that. We have articulated that clearly. What we're saying, these are issues in terms of how it is we protect the constitutional rights of our teachers. We have engaged with constitutional lawyers around these things, and they're saying these are significant flaws that we need to be treated with. And we're saying, let's have a coming together of the mind. We are a responsible union. We, in principle, support the bill going forward. So this idea that the JTA wants to crash the bill, no, that is not the position. But what we are saying is we want engagement on this. We want engagement. And there cannot be any level of engagement without representation.
45 meetings of the Joint Select Committee, though.
And 20 years, Dion.
And you're still saying there has
that is the problem. None of what we put forward, the majority, vast majority, rejected.
Precisely.
It's the same documents we're talking about now that we presented, in 2014 and we have 2022. It's the same document. And all came back is 37 amendments of commas and was and were and are and is.
And we're full stop.
All right, I'm nearly out of time. So tell me how we move forward on this. Dr. Anderson, you first.
Well, from where I sit, my appeal is certainly to the Minister of Education and to the policymakers in the lower house. Remember, you were made by teachers. Never forget them. Those of us who have those of the members of parliament who have teachers in their constituency, listen to them.
Right.
Listen to them and let us have a frank conversation around the issues that have been outlined. It can be fixed. It can be done. It's a laudable, the bill has some laudable objectives.
Absolutely.
But we must be careful we don't undermine them by trying to be too overly punitive, being excessive on one side.
Mr. Campbell.
Certainly, I'm in agreement with my colleagues. We need the bill. The Teaching Council is in existence and it is doing a marvelous job as it is, but it is restricted, and we need this bill to pass, but we don't want it to be done in a hurry come up way. Meet with the different stakeholders, work out the issues, add the various sections that are needed, clarify what needs to be clarified, and let us get it passed in the interest of our student. But more so, let us try to retain our teachers in the classroom and let's make sure that we don't lose many come September.
I spent the day, Dion, and happy Teachers Day to all the teachers across Jamaica. I spent the day traveling from 5 o'clock this morning, traveling around to various schools. Some schools you travel for almost an hour into the deep interior of the island. And what I saw, every single one of those amazing things happening. Children learning despite the challenges that they face, despite their starting points. We have to be careful that we do not provide an inhibitors for our teachers to want to stay, because it's difficult to get teachers to those community, and fundamentally children are the ones that suffer. We want to build, and anybody that's been in change management understand that change is difficult for everybody, but we want to be able to be a part of this process. We want to feel included. We want to have a greater say and autonomy in the direction of our profession, and we believe as a JT that there is an opportunity here, and the minister has expressed an interest, and we have been having some dialogue about let's meet. All right, she has written to me, I've written back to her, and there is ongoing discussion of how it is. But what we are concerned about is that we don't want another 20-year period of discussion. What we have put forward are sensible amendments, and I say to every single parliamentarian in the lower house that at the end of the day, there are teachers in your constituency, individuals that are contributing to the growth and development of the communities. Let's support them. Let us make these amendments and get this through.
Gonna have to leave it there. We did lose Mr. Wright. My apologies. That's why I didn't go back to him for a final comment. Happy to have had him on though. And thanks so much to our guests in studio. Thanks as always to you at home for watching. Come back next time for another edition of the program. On behalf of the news and production teams, I'm Dion Jackson Miller. Have a great evening, folks. Stay safe. Give thanks.